EA's NHL series has been on the rebound after a rough go of things. Last year's entry did not have a version made for the new family of consoles, though. That is rectified this year with a solid current-gen version I played on my Xbox Series X. What isn't so good is the over-the-top monetization that is at the forefront of the Hockey Ultimate Team mode. Thankfully, the on-ice action is better than ever. An almost overwhelming plethora of modes makes this a great addition of the series, outside of some really annoying UI bugs. Let's go over everything in our review of EA's NHL 22. Hockey is by far my favorite sport. Growing up near Boston, I've had a lifelong love of the Bruins and have been spoiled with an excellent sports team for most of my adult life. EA's NHL series, though, has been a mixed bag. After an incredible run in the 90s, they were outclassed by Sega's NHL 2K series for me, and in recent years have been struggling to find themselves. After last year's solid showing for the previous generation of consoles, I had high hopes that a proper current-gen version could be a ticket to true greatness. I may have felt a bit of trepidation over things moving to the Frostbite engine, but thankfully the on-ice action in the game has never felt better to me. Graphically, things are a bit of a mixed bag. Most of the players' faces, the jersey textures, the arenas themselves all look fantastic at a high resolution and 60 frames per second, well, not in cutscenes. The crowd does not look good close up though, and the less popular players in the league tend to have a terrible looking face model. Animations are uniformly fantastic, and depending on your preferred playstyle, it can be as fast as any arcade version of the sport has ever been, or a solid attempt at being a full-on simulation and pretty much anywhere in between. The options for tuning the game to your preference are numerous, and it is a fantastic system in practice. I tend to enjoy the more simulation style of things, with longer periods and slower action, but hopping into the threes mode or a quick online game, the arcade style felt great. One issue I did have was at almost any difficulty, if I tried to just simulate a match with the PC, that one side would score a goal almost immediately in every game I tried, and then barely score any after. It was an oddly specific bug, but it happened 5 times in a row for me. Let's get into the vast number of modes though, as there should be something for everyone here. This really does feel like an online-focused game, but thankfully there are still many offline modes as well, which is my personal preference. I'll start with an exhaustive list of each. First, for the offline modes. Play Now is your standard exhibition mode. Be a Pro Career is the storyline and choice-driven career mode that makes a comeback from last year. I'm pretty deep into it and it's been stellar so far. Franchise mode is as in-depth as you want, or you can choose to not control every aspect of the team. If you want to be a GM, you can play or simulate every game as you want. Tournaments are exactly what they sound like, with an excellent selection of options. Ones is a 1v1v1 mode that I did okay in, but it was an odd thing to wrap my head around at first. NHL's Threes is a 3v3 mode with a goalie on each squad. It's a more open and arcade-style game. Season mode is exactly what you would think, and it has great depth. And the playoff mode where you can jump right into the best part of all sports. For the online modes, you have the World of Chell, where you create a player and bring them online to play either competitively or cooperatively with other players. Next up is HUT, or the Hockey Ultimate Team. It is the microtransaction-fueled team building mode, and rounding things out is the online version of the franchise mode. There is also a plethora of accessibility options, which is becoming more common in bigger titles and is great to see. It's an enormous list of modes that covers pretty much everything I could have ever thought of, or things I had never even dreamed of. My favorite has been the Be a Pro Career mode and the Season modes, both of which I've enjoyed the majority of my trial version time with. EA did provide us with a review code for the game, but there was an issue with it not giving access to the full game before release. None of those modes would really matter though if the game didn't play well, and thankfully after a bit of fine-tuning with the options, I am incredibly happy with it. By default, things start off quite arcadey, and in the 3v3 that worked well. For full-on games though, for me, I like to slow the action down and make it more realistic with less puck magnetism to player sticks, or making it that bruising game that we all know and love. The controls have multiple options to choose from, and I found myself using the right stick configuration over the classic button layout here. The big new thing gameplay-wise is the Superstar X Factor abilities. In the game's menu, make sure to tell you this at every single opportunity. As a Boston Bruins fan, seeing David Pastrnak handling the puck the way he does in real life and then effortlessly snapping off a wrister felt incredible. Using Connor McDavid made me feel like I was one of the most talented players on the planet as I glided around making play after play. Controls felt responsive, and rarely do you feel like a penalty isn't really your fault. Though on that end, the computer rarely committed any penalties of their own, which can get pretty frustrating. Looking up things like a goalie's strengths and weaknesses led me to much greater success in my career mode as well, because the game does an excellent job of considering just how much scouting matters in the sport. Knowing your team and what each player can do, and should never attempt to do, is key for higher difficulties. But there are always the easier ones if you're just looking to relax and have a good time after a hard day. Another thing the game nails is the presentation of it all. I'm not a fan of the music chosen in the menus, so I muted that quickly and just went with the theme song, but the presentation of the game itself when you're playing is excellent. The commentary features people who they had in the recording booth long enough to make it obvious that there's a lot of it. Repeats were not common, and they almost always fit the situation of the game perfectly. I really like the art style of the TV presentation. It looks great, though one area that falters a bit is the in-game cutscenes, as they run at 30 frames per second. And oddly, the pre-rendered video transitions in between periods and stuff can be low resolution at times, which was pretty jarring for an otherwise sterling-looking 4K presentation. One main area of concern for me was the general bugginess of the build. The trial version is the full game, but still, the first day the game would freeze at connecting whenever I would try to change modes, requiring me to completely close the game and open it back up, sometimes having to repeat this 2 or 3 times before it would work again. It would just get stuck at a screen that would say connecting every time. This stopped happening to me as much on day 2 and hasn't come back since. There have been some hilarious graphical bugs posted online, though in my time with the game, the most I've seen myself were some odd physics interactions during cutscenes with players pushing referees all around the ice as they were trying to make a call. I did have an incredibly frustrating first impression, but things have seemed to smooth out for me on the Series X. I no longer have a 1X or 1S anymore though, so I've been unable to try out those versions of the game. Wrapping things up, sports games are definitely a tough sell every year, especially when the series version of the game is an extra $10 and costs $70 US now. Thankfully, if you do have Game Pass Ultimate, you get that 10-hour free trial, which I went through 2.5 of for this review, as part of the EA Play subscription that's included with Game Pass Ultimate. If you love the sport of hockey and you want the best looking and playing version of it, probably of all time, with a staggering number of modes and options, then I think NHL 22 is going to make you extremely happy. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you can like, comment, and subscribe, it really does help our channel grow. And we'll see you here next time on XboxEra.